Rolling dice at the table is fun for the players, but only if those rolls mean something for their characters and the story. Many times during a session, rolling to determine the outcome is completely unnecessary, a waste of time, and can break the immersion of your game. When you as the GM ask your player to make rolls, that takes time. Your player has to find the right die, roll, look up their modifier, and give you the result. Now take that time and multiply it by the number of times they roll needlessly per session, and it will start to add up and take away from your already precious game time. My name is Mike, and this is the Game Master's Vault. In this episode, we'll dig deeper into when GMs should ask the players to make rolls and when they shouldn't. To roll or not to roll? That is the question. Let's find the answers in the vault. Making skill and perception checks are a big part of most RPGs, and their outcomes can be just as important and sometimes more important than attack rolls in combat. Many players focus on the combat prowess of their characters and minimize their skills and proficiencies, even though it makes up half or more of our games. We should be discussing with our players during Session 0 the amount of combat, social, and exploratory encounters there will be in the game, and how important skills and proficiencies can be. And as Matt Colville suggests, you should only allow players proficient or skilled to make rolls. This helps individual characters feel unique and that they're contributing to the party. Besides, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having skills if any schmuck can make an Arcana check or pick a lock untrained. So if we're talking about not needing to roll, why the focus only on skill checks? Well, in most systems, for things like combat attack rolls, there's a chance of a critical success or a critical failure, and those could have better or worse consequences than simply hitting or missing the enemy. Even if the player has a high bonus and should hit a monster every time, there's still a chance they could roll a 1 and their sword could slip out of their hand and go flying 15 feet behind them. We should only have the players roll dice if the result of the action is questionable. Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Is there a chance for success? If you make a lock with a DC 50 to open, there's no way your level 3 rogue can roll high enough to open it. 2. Can the check fail? If the player's bonus modifier is higher than the DC, they will automatically succeed. 3. With the roll effect of the game, will the roll affect the game in any way? Is there more information that the player can get through succeeding at a roll? If you answered no to any of these questions, there's no need to call for a roll. The good practice is to know if a roll will be necessary or not to make a small chart. Along the top, have the characters' names and put a list of skills and proficiencies along the side. Write in each player's bonus or modifier for each skill and attach it to your GM screen. If the party's ranger with a +12 modifier wants to jump from one rooftop to another and the DC of the jump is 12, they will make the jump even if they roll a 1 on the die. Again, since most systems don't have critical successes and failures on skill checks, only attacks in combat, they cannot fail. And if they can't fail, why even make them roll? Just use your common sense. Some things are just going to be automatic. And don't forget to update that chart every time the party levels up. You should be comfortable in setting the difficulty class within your system of choice. I like using the list from the 5e Player's Handbook on page 174. Something very easy or common knowledge is a DC 5. Easy is 10, moderate is 15, hard is 20, very hard is 25, and nearly impossible is 30. Now remember that it's your prerogative as the GM to adjust or modify these DCs as you see fit. Consider all the factors that may come into play that would affect the difficulty. For example, a PC would like to make a perception check but is moving at full speed or running. You should add +5 to the DC. Bad lighting without a torch or a lantern, again, you can add a +5. So if their bonuses or modifiers are higher than the DC, they just do the thing or get the info. Some GMs do use a type of system for knowledge or lore checks where if they succeed by 5 or more, they get more information. In those instances, a roll might be needed, but higher level characters with higher modifiers would not. I think that's just more work for the GM to figure out, so I just use a succeed or fail approach. Speaking of failing a check, you should always give the PC something, even when they fail. Not all the information, but more of a foreshadowing of the information that they would get if they actually succeed on the check. For example, let's say the party's wizard, Bob, wants to investigate some runes written on a cave wall because they detect it as magical. If he succeeds on the check, he would learn that the runes give a word to be spoken to dispel the illusionary magic placed here by an ancient dwarven cult that worshipped the demon Orcus. The magic is very faint, but still hides a secret passageway behind an illusion of a solid rock wall. If Bob fails, perhaps he's told the runes are indeed magical and appear to be an old dwarven dialect, the specific words you can't quite decipher, but the context sounds pretty evil. On a failed check, you get to determine what information they receive. When conversing with NPCs to gather information, what they get might be useless, half-true, or completely false. And when you avoid saying, "Nope, you didn't make it," and instead describe the result, there will always be a question in the player's mind: did I do it? By not letting them know right away if they succeeded or not, the rogue may certainly think she's being incredibly stealthy, but in reality she's blinking like a neon sign to the orc guards she's trying to sneak past. She'd know her stealth check failed when the orc guards attacked her. When a PC wants to make a perception check and fails, we all know what's coming next. All the other players think something important is going to be missed and yell out, "I'm going to look too," right? We've all been there, and here's how you handle it. Aiding another is found in most systems, and it allows other characters to aid the first in their attempted check. The DC to aid is typically only 10, so all the other players usually succeed, giving the first player a +2 to their roll for each successful aid. Simply tell your players that if you would like to aid, it must be done before the first check is rolled, and they must describe how they are attempting to give aid, especially if they're using a different skill. For example, the party's fighter says he's going to attempt crashing through a heavy wooden door. Normally, if other members are going to aid, they would use their strength, but the party's druid wants to use her knowledge of nature to aid him instead. The druid says that she will examine the wooden door and use her nature knowledge to find a weak spot in the wood and point it out to the fighter so he can hit it at just the right spot for maximum effect. Since this seems to be both fair and logical, I would allow the druid to attempt to aid in this way. Again, consult your chart. Sometimes they won't even need to make an aid roll. They will just succeed. Now, whether a check fails or succeeds, you should tailor any information gained specifically to that character. What information a barbarian might deem important will certainly differ from what a wizard would think is important. If both of them walk into the same room, the barbarian will probably be looking for weapons or food, while the wizard might be more interested in books, maps, or artwork. You should know your party well enough after the first session or two what kinds of things they're on the lookout for. and you can often spin the same basic information to different characters. In that room is an empty bottle of wine. The barbarian notices by smell it was a weak elven wine, more like water to him. The wizard may notice the bottle's label, and the winery it was made at is over 1,000 miles from here. One place that I rarely allow skill checks is during combat. The character is too distracted by that large minotaur swinging his large battle axe in his face to make any kind of check. In most systems, making a skill check is a regular action as well. Does the player really want to forego making an attack to make a knowledge or perception check? That was a lot of ideas on how to cut out some of the rolling that slows down a game. But like everything, use it as you will. Perhaps the fighter is attempting to shove a squirrel into a bag of holding, so I'd make them roll. It would be funny watching them fail a few times. So what are your thoughts? What do you make your players roll for, and what gets skipped in your game? Leave us a comment down below. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe to the channel for more GM tips from the Game Master's Vault. Well, that was a pretty good episode, but I gotta go practice my death saving throws, so see you, nerds.